Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Grounded. My name is Brian Boyd. Today's topic is stop living in the past. Before we dive into this episode, I would love to thank everyone for tuning in, no matter where you may be. And I truly hope and pray that with this, God will inspire you to not live in the past and not desire the things that you once had, and be content with your present and be hopeful for the future that awaits you. But with that being said, everyone, let's go ahead and talk about the topic, stop living in the past. And this is the episode that I've been waiting to shoot for a little bit. And it's something that I believe that we all do to some extent. You know, there are times where we may think back on our previous memories, our previous successes, our previous accomplishments, our previous relationships, and so many other things in our past. And we begin to have a rather exaggerated view of how those things are. We'll either see the very positive side of it, or we'll see the very negative side. And by looking at it from that perspective, by looking at it at that lens, it causes us to distort the way we may have felt about something at the time. And from personal experience and just living a little bit, and even looking at it in the biblical perspective, you know, there are so many times where our past wasn't as good as we thought it was. And quite frankly, if we would have stayed in those situations, if we would have kept those opportunities, if we didn't let some stuff go, it would have ended up derailing us or destroying us altogether. And that's what I want to talk about tonight. And to back this up biblically, I'm going to be using the story of the quail. And to kind of give you back context to this is the children of Israel. From the book of Exodus, how God had delivered them out of Egypt. You know, there was a time and they went through a period where God had begun to test their faith and to see if they would truly follow him. So they were out there in the wilderness, and on their journey, you know, towards Mount Sinai to the promised land, you know, they started complaining, i.e. the children of Israel, about different things that they had. So when they complained about food, God had literally made bread rain from heaven. All right. When they complained about water, he literally made water come out and gush out of rocks for them to drink. And he just made provisions for them in multitude of ways. But this is the one right here. This is one of the very severe things that comes from the Lord. And it also serves as a reminder with this quail that he gave them, you know, that our past is the thing that truly holds us back from seeing our present and our future for what it could possibly be. And as long as we continue to live in the past or desire the things that we had in our past, we can't move forward and have the lives that we're supposed to have. And to back this up, I'm actually going to be coming from the actual story in the book of Numbers, chapter 11, and we're going to start from verses 4-6. Okay. And it says that now the rabble of them that were among them had a strong craving, and the people of Israel also wept again and said, "Oh, that we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt that cost nothing, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. But now our strength is dried up, and there is nothing at all but this manna to look at." With these particular verses, everyone, this brings me to the first point of the story. And as I mentioned before, you know, the views of our past is often always exaggerated, because the children of Israel here are talking about how now they only have the heavenly bread to eat, and they don't have the cucumbers, they ain't got the vegetables, they ain't got the fish and stuff that they once had back when they were in Egypt. But the reality of that is that all of the stuff that they desire at this time is tied to their past when they were enslaved, okay? They were in bondage. They were working each and every day. They were making brick out of straw. They had to, you know, they lived under harsh conditions in a land where people tried to genocide them. Okay. This is how severe it was for them back in the book of Exodus. And now that God has freed them, now that he has taken them on this journey, performed all these signs and wonders and caused them to leave out of Israel with gold and scarlet and all of the valuable things that they had during that particular time. Now they're out here in the wilderness, free, mind you, complaining about the stuff that they do not have, or that they had back when they were still in slave, back when they were still in chains, back when they were working day and night. But now they're actually free, and they can't appreciate the stuff that God has. And so many times in life, bringing that into the times today, you know, we do the same thing. We think about all the things we had back in the past. We think about the money we used to have. We think about the cars and the homes that we used to have. We think about the opportunities that we had back then, and we always think, what if we did things differently? What if we kept these things? What if we didn't let that stuff go? But the reality of it is that it's often a distorted view, as I mentioned once again, because you either remember the positive sides of the past, or you remember the negative sides. And oftentimes Our minds tend to drift towards the more positive things, but in the reality of that situation, we often forget everything that was tied to what we particularly had. And when we do that, it causes us to be, unappreciative of the place that we are right now. And quite frankly, as I mentioned so many times before, just like them in Israel, they were in bondage at that time. And in some situations in our lives, we were trapped up, we were caught up too, but we don't envision that. And I guess the whole purpose of this point is to really say that sometimes in our life, when we look back at our past, our distorted lens of what that is calls us to not appreciate the time that we're in right now, because we in most cases are in a way better situation than we were at that particular time. We can't see those things because we desire what we used to have so badly, and that blinds us to all of the opportunities that we have right now and the opportunities that we can ensure that we have a better future. And by staying in the past, it brings you to the second point of that, dwelling in that particular situation will consume you. And this is what we see with the children of Israel, because God actually hears their complaints. He's tired of their complaints, and now he decides to give them what they want. And we see that in Numbers chapter 11, verses 18 through 20. And these are the words of God. And he says, "And say to the people, consecrate yourselves for tomorrow, and you shall eat meat. For you have wept in the hearing of the Lord, saying, who will give us meat to eat? For it was better for us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you meat, and you shall eat. You shall not eat just 1 day or 2 days or 5 days or 10 days or 20 days, but a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils and becomes loathsome to you, because you have rejected the Lord who is among you and have wept before him, saying, why did we come out of Egypt?" And so in these verses right here, everyone, God is expressing his irritation, his frustration, his anger with the children of Israel, because in his eyes, they're rejecting him because they're desiring the things of their past. They're desiring the things that they had in Egypt. And because their minds are so focused and fixated on what they had in the past, they can't appreciate the Lord for all of the stuff that he's done. Because as I mentioned, once again, they were in bondage for over 400 years. Okay. They got to a point to where Egypt wanted to genocide their race. They wanted to eliminate them off of the face of the earth, but the Lord allowed that stuff not to happen. He made sure that they would continue to grow and multiply and reproduce in spite of all of the measurements and the provisions that Egypt tried to make to exterminate them. Okay. And then after that, after the time came, God delivered them out by signs and wonders and plagues and all of these things. And he brought them into a mountain where they were free, and he was going to take them into a promised land, a land flowing with milk and honey, which translates to prosperity and peace. And he was going to give them rest in that time. But the only thing the children of Israel could see was the fact that they didn't have no meat to eat. Okay. They had bread and stuff literally falling from heaven. They had water. They had everything that they needed, but they wanted something else, and they didn't. It's not stuff that they needed. It's just the stuff that they wanted. And that brings me back to even with us dwelling on the past, because when we look back at the past and we desire those things that we once had, it takes our mind off of the stuff that we have right now and the stuff that we really need, because wanting that stuff will consume us. And that's exactly what the Lord did to them. He said that since you want these things so badly, since you have rejected me as your God and as your king, I will give you this stuff to the point of overflow. I will give you this stuff to the point to where you will detest it once you're done eating it, where you won't want it anymore, where you won't desire it anymore. This stuff will overwhelm and consume you. And sometimes in life, even today, God will give us the things that we desire from our past. Okay. There are times where God will send that stuff back around. He will give us exactly what we want, even if it doesn't benefit us, because our minds can't comprehend and our minds can't understand just how bad that stuff was. Okay. Sometimes we have to go back through the situation again just so we can get the lesson that we didn't get the last time, just so we could appreciate the place that we were in before we reconnected with our past, so that we can have a better future and remember that those are not the things that we actually need. Okay. And I guess to really sum this point up and to go into the next point, rekindling your past can ultimately destroy you. Okay. And that's exactly what we see even in this story. And this comes from Numbers chapter 11, verses 31 through 34. And this is the Lord saying it again. It says, "Then a wind from the Lord sprang up, and it brought quail from the sea and let them fall beside the camp about a day's journey on this side and a day's journey on the other side around the camp and about 2 cubits above the ground. And the people rose that all that day and all night and all the next day and gathered the quail. Those who gathered least gathered 10 homers, and they spread them out for themselves around the camp. Now, while the meat was yet between their teeth, before it was consumed, the anger of the Lord was kindled against the people, and the Lord struck down the people with a very great plague. Therefore, the name of that place was called Kibroth Hattaavah, because they had buried the people who had the craving. Now, to sum up this particular verses, everyone, God gave them once again exactly what they desired. He gave them so much quail that they could not consume it. And in the Bible, the translation for homers, right? 1 homer is the equivalent of 220 liters. And if you ever saw 2-liter soda, imagine seeing that 100 times. Okay, that's how much they were putting in their homes. All right. That's how much quail they had gathered because they desired that stuff so much, okay? And then after filling themselves up with that all day and all night, bringing that stuff into their homes and cooking it and frying it and baking it and doing whatever it was that they were doing, the Lord decided to send a plague for all of those people who didn't appreciate the things that he did so far, and the plague ended up wiping those people out. And the thing about it, while there is a very severe punishment from the Lord, all right, while those are things that, we'll look at and question, like, why would the Lord do all of this? You have to go back and understand the true pretense of this story, okay? Because once again, God has done all of this stuff for them. God has made all of these provisions. God has made all of this access for them, and he's pretty much given them all that they needed. He's given them freedom. He's given them power. He's given them an entire land to where they can all go and live in peace for generations. And yet, despite all that the Lord has done for them, from delivering them out of chains, from delivering them out of work, from delivering them out of slavery, they still can't see the goodness that he's done for them. And they wanted to connect with their past so bad. And when you look at the whole time Israel was out in the wilderness, out when they were with God, they always desired to go back to Egypt, where they had everything, or where they believed that they had everything. But the reality of it is, once again, that they were in the very place that was trying to destroy them. And I believe that while the Bible doesn't clarify why God sent the plague, he may have just sent it out of anger. You could kind of see the situation that they were really better off with him to be reality. And if they were in Egypt, they would have been dead, because they were already in a place where they were getting whipped and enslaved and all of these other things, everyone. And that brings us back even to today, because rekindling your past, once again, reconnecting with those things we have no business with, revisiting old jobs, old opportunities, old careers, old people, old business ventures and ideas, those things will drag us down. Those things will consume, and those things will overcome us if we let those things do that. And as I said before, there are times where God will give you exactly what you want. He will connect you with your past, and your past will destroy you if you're not careful, okay? And this is something that you don't want to get into, because just like them, they ended up getting into a place where their mistakes were permanent, okay? Those were things that they couldn't undo. But for us, God gives us the grace at times to overcome those situations, to see just how bad our situation really was and just how good we had it before we got into those situations. So we carry out the lessons of that. But if you can try to prevent yourself from getting into this lesson, for having to repeat this stuff and learn this stuff anyway, please do so. Avoid this stuff at all costs. You understand? You hear me? Avoid this stuff at all costs. Do not look back on your past and desire those things. Instead, focus on the present that you have right now. Focus on all the opportunities. Focus on the people. Focus on the things that God has blessed you with. And then try to use all of those things that he's giving you to ensure that you have a better future, okay? Because the reality of it is this too. You can't go back and change the past, because even if you try to go back to those old opportunities, those doors are already closed, okay? Most of those things will never come back around again. In order for you to move forward with your life, you have to accept that for what it is and keep moving forward regardless, all right? Leave that stuff in the past. Leave the past in the past. Take the lessons, take the memories, enjoy them for what they are, what you believe they are, and move forward. Don't get stuck in those situations. And that pretty much concludes this episode. As a matter of fact, as it says in the title, stop living in the past. I cannot stress this enough because there's so many times we miss out so much on life because we're living in the past, because we're thinking about things that we could have done, because we have regrets about things that we should have did and opportunities that we should have took and relationships that we should have stayed in. But the reality of that, everyone, is that if we would have did those things, our lives may have possibly ended up being worse than they are right now. And right now, we're truly in the best situation in the present time to take our lessons, to take our regrets and the things that we believe we had in the past and incorporate those things right now to ensure that we have a better future. And that's something that you have to do continually. And that's something that you have to move forward with for the rest of your life, knowing, you can't change the past, but you can always change the future and the present situation that you're in. But anyway, that pretty much concludes this episode. Like I said, this wasn't one of them encouraging episodes or nothing like that. This is just one of them straight talks. All right. Just understand that, every now and then you just got to get one of these, everyone. You know what I'm saying? You got to get into a place where you appreciate your life for what it is and understand that life can always be better. All right. And you can't change the stuff that's already have been, because that stuff is gone. That stuff is done. That stuff will never come back again. All right. But with that being said, I truly hope and pray that you got something out of this episode. If you did, please be sure to like and share this with anybody who may need it. And as always, please be sure to stick around and stay connected for so much more content to come. All right, everyone. Love you all. I appreciate you. Please continue to be blessed, be safe, and be prosperous out here in this world, man, because there's a lot going on, everyone. And I'm praying and covering you all as much as possible. But, take care. Be blessed. I'll talk to you all soon. And y'all have a good day. All right. Peace. Hey everyone, Brian here once again. Thank you so much for tuning in to Grounded. If these messages have been a blessing to you, please consider donating at thegroundedpodcast.com/donate. Furthermore, if you're looking for books and journals and other resources that will help improve your life, business, and relationships, please be sure to check those out at thegroundedpodcast.com/store. As always, it's been a blessing. I truly love each and every one of you, and I truly hope to see you all once again very soon. All right? Peace.